Welcome to the Pinning Combination Podcast. I'm KJ Pilcher alongside Dick Briggs, ready to talk a little college and high school wrestling in Eastern Iowa across the state. Um, but another week down, a lot of big performances over the last weekend to get to. We'll talk about Iowa State and UNI heading out to Vegas and how they did out there. Iowa improved to 4-0 with a win at Penn. So we're stretching from the northeast to the west with what we're talking about today on the college side. High school is getting into, they just had their first full weekend of competition. A lot of big tournaments to kick off those Saturday events. So a lot to get to. We'll also have teeing it up with Briggs to bridge the gap between the two. But Coach, how are you doing? Have you started looking for my Christmas present yet?
I just noticed it's about 3 weeks, so I better get on it. I'm a little late on that. So
are you strike me as a guy that likes to get stuff like that. You always got stuff out of the way early, or are you a December 23rd, 24th kind of last minute guy?
When I was coaching for those 40 years of coaching, I was absolutely a last minute guy.
I suppose you didn't have very much time.
No, didn't have hardly any time. Once in a while, I would have it ahead of time, way ahead of time, and something that was maybe in the summer or something that popped up, but that was pretty rare. You're just not thinking. And then so most of the time I work pretty good under pressure. So.
Yeah, I was a last minute guy. I think maybe the year of COVID might have been the only year that we really were ahead of things, just because we were online and working from home, so it was a little bit easier to get ahead. But normally I'm rushing around trying to find stuff on December 23rd with Chris. We're kind of divide and conquer trying to get those. So we'll see if we do a little bit better later on this year.
Good for you. I've been I was always good at handing it off. I had one person to shop for. She shopped for everyone else. So.
Well, Christmas kind of came early for Iowa State here. They gave themselves a pretty good gift this weekend, coming away with a title at the Cliff Keen Las Vegas Invitational. Had a couple, 3 finalists. Got a individual title from Younger Bastida at heavyweight. But the Cyclones did a nice job bouncing back from that dual loss to Iowa and won a tournament that had 15 of the top 20 ranked teams in it.
Right. And the dual loss to Iowa, I don't think hurt. Well, I mean, obviously, Iowa State wants to win it, but I don't think it hurt their future season. The looking forward in that, they're so close, and a couple of things could have happened differently. They could have won that, so they got that great taste in their mouth, even though they didn't win. So, I mean, obviously, they springboarded right into the Cliff Keen, which is a high-powered tournament. I don't know, 15. How many teams were there? I think it was 15 or something like that. Or no, because it was 32-man brackets. It was huge, wasn't it? 30.
Yeah,
anyway,
more than that.
Right, and I watched a good portion of it online, and the Iowa State guys. I was keying in on, of course, Iowa State and UNI guys, and some of the non Iowa school Iowa guys, but. Iowa State's kids look great. I mean, they wrestle tough. Even the guys that didn't place did a nice job. So I mean, the one exception, of course, that they're disappointed with was David Carr. But that was controversial. I'm looking at that going, man. At the end of that match, it could have been a reversal and near fall, and the official was waiting to give the reversal, and so he waited, gave the reversal, and then didn't have enough time to get a 2 count in for the near fall. It was that close. And some would say that was a bad call. Some would say it was a great call. It is what it is, and it was the official's call, and that's how he made it. And so maybe now Carr will get on his horse and get going, because he's got a guy down in Missouri looking at him too. So
Right. Um, but still a third place finish. I know the standard's probably a little bit different for David Carr, but still third place finish, pretty good. Evan Frost continues to wrestle well for the Cyclones. He knocked off Brody Teske in the duel, and then he makes it to the 133-pound finals and finishes second. Um, I know 33 was a little down. No Vito, no Fix. I don't think Chris Cannon was there for Michigan, who transferred from Northwestern, but still a pretty nice job by Frost to make the finals there. Will Feldkamp had a nice tournament, making the 184-pound finals. Um, we see him kind of bouncing back from, uh, you know, uh, falling to Gabe Arnold. But he wrestled well, facing Parker Keckeisen in the finals, which is no easy task for anybody to take on. But Bastida, I tell you what, there have been some folks that have made weight changes or what have you. Bastida's move to heavyweight, I think, is one of the better moves that has benefited the wrestler, because he looks quick, he looks strong, explosive, and he's just been phenomenal at that higher weight class.
right, last week I had a big question mark whether he's gonna be able to handle the move, being a little bit lighter heavyweight. After watching him last weekend, that question mark is really little tiny right now, and because we still got to see a little bit more, and I'd like to see him with some higher ranked wrestlers as well. But he looked good. He did look good. So,
and of course, he came away. Lucas Davison, another one of those Northwestern wrestlers that transferred. He's at Michigan now. But Bastida with a late takedown to win 5-3 in the finals. Before that, I think Bastida really kind of cruised to the finals. But getting that win over a number 3 ranked wrestler, that's put Bastida in the top 4, I think, in the latest win rankings. And I know there are some really good heavyweights out there, right? With Kirk Villette and Hendrickson and some others, but I tell you what, I think Bastida is somebody that you really have to kind of consider a contender up there now,
right,
if you hadn't already.
exactly, and if you compare what appears to be this year's lineup of heavyweights, and compare that to the last few years, actually this year might be down a bit, even though it's so competitive. But I mean,
Not as deep, definitely not as deep.
not as deep. You take out all Stevenson and Cassiope and some of the other guys that have graduated and so forth, and it's just not as deep. So, and it's a little scattered right now. We don't know, the number 3 may not be number 3 at all. And that's true at everyweight, but
Right.
particularly at heavyweight. So we'll see. I think it's a great move and a particularly good year for that to happen.
Just running down the team scores here really quick. Iowa State won it at 130.5. They beat Nebraska, who's runner up, 5 points back. Ohio State was third at 123.5. NC State 115, and then Oregon State rounded out the top 5 at 98.5. Kind of looking at the place winners. For Iowa State, we mentioned Evan Frost was second at 133, lost to Orion by major decision in the finals. At 141, Anthony Echemendia finished 7th there. Casey Swiderski was 5th at 149. And then you mentioned David Carr's 3rd At 131, lost that tough one to Ramirez from Cornell. But had a couple nice wins on the backside. Beat Cam Amin for third place, 3-1. But how about Isaac Olenek for Oklahoma State? He comes away with a title there. He beat Hamity handily earlier. I mean, that's a guy that's really made some gains for Okie State.
I didn't know a whole lot about him, and then after watching the tournament, wow, I'm impressed. Like you're saying, he walked away very impressive. So good win for him for sure.
Another finisher at 165 of note, former Iowa City West state champ Hunter Garvin, who's out at Stanford. He finished sixth at the Las Vegas tournament. At 174, speaking of former Iowans, got Cade DeVos, who's at South Dakota State. Southeast Polk or Waukee?
Southeast Polk.
Southeast Polk prep. He beat Travis Whitlake 9-7 in the finals to win the 174-pound bracket. Iowa State's MJ Gaitan was eighth there. We mentioned Feldkamp was second at 184. Non-Iowans at 197. Tanner Sloan at South Dakota State finished third. The Jackrabbits ended up 10th overall, I think, in the team standings, and those Iowa guys helped them with a top 10 finish. We mentioned Bastida winning at heavyweight, and former Wahlert Iowa Central wrestler Boone McDermott, who transferred from Rutgers to Oregon State, he finished fourth there. But now Iowa State, they have some time. They don't wrestle again until like later this month at the collegiate duels. So they've got some time to kind of rest up, work, and fine tune some things. I mean, this just seems like a perfect springboard into that time.
Right. Iowa State's already had 4 duels. In comparison, Iowa will have their 4th duel, I think, this Friday, and UNI will have their first duel on Saturday. So you're right. They're kind of have that break, and it's for the colleges, this early December period is kind of the end of the term or finals testing time. So they like to take that break in there, and that's fitting, because remember, these guys are our students, they've got to get those classes passed. So
right.
A quick comment on Hunter Garvin. I watched quite a few of his matches. He looked good. He did a nice job. He's going to be a nice fit there for Stanford. Boone McDermott, oh man, what a nice guy. And then of course with Tanner Sloan, equally is nice. But Tanner was wrestling Jackson Smith, the Maryland 97-pounder, and had that leg up so many times and just couldn't finish it. And then Smith got in, took him down to his back, and that was the difference in that match. And then Smith went on and played second, I think. So tough loss for Tanner. He's got to learn to finish those takedowns. Kind of like Carr as well was in on that as well. So just couldn't finish if I remember right on Carr. But anyway, so it was nice, fun to watch those Iowa high school kids compete.
And then you and I had some strong individual showings down there. Obviously, Keck Eisen, I mean, every time I watch him wrestle, he just impresses me. I mean, it's something that I don't know. He just doesn't let you take it for granted to watch him wrestle. You know what I mean? It just seems like every time he's out there that it's fun to watch him wrestle.
Yeah.
Car's the same way. But Keck Eisen, Spencer Lee was that way, obviously, as well. But Keck Eisen is just a guy that, this is gonna sound a little goofy, but he reminds me of kind of an everyman's man, right? He's like the same person that you would see shoveling the sidewalk on, you know, on a Thursday afternoon. Um, and and he's in the NCAA finals. He's just like a guy you can relate to, and you look at, and you're not just by you just think you could walk up to him and be buddies with him, instead of being in awe of him. And then when you see him on the mat, you realize that's not an everyman's person, right? That guy is he's got a motor that doesn't quit. Uh, he's so fun and um,
Right.
energetic. I mean, it's fun to watch him, and yet he does it in a way that I think a lot of people just kind of gravitate towards his humility and his kind of persona, I guess.
Yeah, and to support your thoughts here, his I call him workmanlike, kind of blue collar.
Yeah,
He went out. I don't remember if it's the quarters or the semis. Went out and got taken down, and I'm going, oh man, what's going on here? And then he turned around. I think it was a 9-3 match. He got taken down, then won at 9-3. It was kept the pressure on, and something like that anyway. And then in the finals, it was just he handled Feldkamp, and but the thing that I like about him is his teammates from what I saw this weekend on the mat, have that same sort of workmanlike attitude. At least the ones that I was able to watch, which was quite a few, and ones that we like. Our friends, the Happels, like he did a nice job. Kale, that same workmanlike, and effort, and Kale finished fourth, and then just Farber from the 33 pounder. Boy,
right.
I don't know much about him, but I got to watch him this weekend, and I like him. He's a goer, hard going, nice put together kid, and so he placed seventh in the tournament. And I mean, placing at this tournament is I don't care what place you are. This is a mini. It's a national tournament that they do in 2 days instead of 3. So
Right.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
a lot of talent. Just looking at Kekaisen's overall tournament, he opened up with a pin, and then he got a tech fall against Armstrong from Utah Valley. Beat North Carolina's Gavin Kane, who's ranked, beat him 13-3. Beat Lenny Pinto in the semifinals from Nebraska, who's All-American quality wrestler. Beat him 8-4, and then Feldkamp, a returning All-American. It's ranked anywhere from 6, top 10 guy, ranked as high as 6, beat him 14-4. So he outscored his final 4 opponents. I think it was like 55 to 11 or 16, 55-16, actually. In a high quality tournament, a tournament that is national tournament quality caliber,
Right.
And to do that is just pretty impressive.
Right. And that match I was talking about was that quarterfinal. It ended up 13-3. That he got taken down off the bat, that scored the next 13 points. So
wow,
that's
wow.
that's something else. How about that?
Right, and you mentioned Cale Happel. Nice job placing fourth. Got a couple really good wins with win over Brock Hardy of Nebraska. Beat Echemendia of Iowa State. Beat him 9-3. Had a Penn and major decision to open things up. Had a little bit of a setback with Ryan Jack of North Carolina State, but then got those 2 big wins on the backside before getting fourth to number 3, Lachlan McNeil of North Carolina in a 6-3 match. And that's talking to Happel before the season. He mentioned that he kind of revisited what made him good. Said sometimes you get to college and you have this notion that you have to change a lot of stuff, that you maybe over evolve a little bit to where you try to do too many different things or switch things up to where you actually get away from what makes you good what made you good in the first place. And he kind of said he revisited that in the off season, and so far this year he's looked really good at 141, and I think this last weekend kind of showed that. And then at 133, Julian Farber, Doug Schwab said this at media day that I think some people were looking at another person stepping in at 133, and due to injury, Farber's the guy. And he said, if you don't know Julian Farber, you're going to get to know him.
Yeah,
He's going to turn some heads.
yeah.
And don't overlook him. And I think maybe this is an example of what Schwab was saying. And coming away with a 7th place finish there. I mean, he got a nice win over Wisenhunt from Oregon State. We saw him wrestle at Iowa earlier this season against Teskey. And finish things off with a victory. So I think that's got to be a huge positive for Farber and the Panthers to see him do well at 133.
That's interesting. I didn't know Schwab, that was Schwab's quote, but that was exactly me this weekend watching him. I didn't know much about him. I saw him. I said, I like him. He turned my head for sure. You bet. Now, others that turned my head, it wasn't just Farber. Ryder Downey. Remember Downey that had the big upset in the state final? Yep. Anyway, I don't know if it's upset. Upset does, I guess. It was a 4-timer potentially, but probably not an upset to him. Anyway, Downey beat the number 7 and number 10 seeds. He lost to the number 2 and number 5 seeds on the backside in a close decision, but he looked really good. Wyatt Volker, West Delaware, he went 3-2 and was 1 match short of placing. Did a nice job, and then also their heavyweight, Jose Valdez, went 3-2 and was 1 match from placing. So I don't know what's going on at heavyweight there. Do you know?
I think Gordon's a little banged up.
Banged up. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you always hear coaches kind of say, if this was March, he'd be going, that kind of thing. I think he's a little bit banged up, and right now, the rest kind of served him a little bit better than competing at the moment.
Okay, so with Valdez, he makes for a very fine replacement for sure. So I'm kind of wondering about that with Saturday's meet against Columbia. So when we get to that, so
right. And the person I was thinking of was Corey Land, the redshirt freshman for UNI at 133. I think a lot of people were expecting him to step in and had some high expectations for him, but sounds like injury is going to keep him out. And that's and not that Farber was going to concede the spot to him anyway, but that's just kind of where Schwab said, if you don't know Julian Farber, you're going to get to know him because he's going to catch your attention and turn some heads. And obviously that was the case. Any other things that kind of stand out? Cade DeVos, his performance at 174 really catapulted him up the rankings. That was a good showing for him.
Yeah, that was a great win there. I didn't really, shame on me. I didn't look at the depth of 74, in terms of ranked kids. So I don't know if it was a real tough. I mean, they're all tough, but if there were a lot of high ranked kids or not. One other thing is that stood out to me. I think Cornell and Stanford are good teams, and Cornell had two runners up, so they had 2 finalists, and then Stanford had 6 place winners, including Provo at 125 as a champ, Nico Provo. So I like those 2 teams, Cornell and Stanford. Keep an eye on them.
Yeah, and Stanford, Lorenzo Norman, he finished 7th for Stanford at 174, and the big thing there is he knocked off Michigan's Shane Griffith. Oh, yeah. And a lot of people remember, he was a national champ for Stanford and actually kind of helped Stanford saved their program a little bit. And he's transferred to Michigan, but Norman knocked him off, and he was the top seed. And I believe Norman's just a freshman as well. So
I don't think Griffith even placed, did he? So
no,
yeah. So he had a rough go of it. So maybe 74 was pretty solid. I just hadn't looked. But
yeah. And you got Carson. You're some of the place winners where you have Carson Karchla from Ohio State, who got third. Danny Wask from Navy got fourth. We mentioned Gatan and Norman, eighth and seventh there. So, there's some quality guys there for sure.
Yeah, we'll see how he does, but that's nice for South Dakota State and for Cade.
For sure. Well, let's switch over to let's go to another part of the country. Head over to Philly, where Iowa and Penn wrestled. Iowa came away with a 22-13 victory there. Ended up winning 7 out of the 10 matches. Couple bonus points there in the upper weights that allowed Penn to really kind of close the deal and have a shot. But what was your take on Iowa's win over Penn this week?
Well, I didn't hear Brands. I just saw maybe a headline or something. I know that he wasn't too excited about the maybe I just saw a soundbite or something. I don't know. But I didn't get a chance to watch it. But looking at this box score here, they can't be too happy. They had six wins by decision, and and a lot of those were 1 or 2 point decisions, pretty close. So, I don't know if they, and again, I was just kind of feeling it out. I know they had kind of some other guys in the lineup in different places, and so I don't think they're too worried about winning the meet. Now it's just a matter of kind of showing improvement and getting some of those guys that are stepping in some confidence on the mat as well. So, my feeling is that they're not too happy, but they're not too too excited about it or too worried about it yet.
Yeah. So excuse me. So here's the soundbite from or the quote from Tom Brands after the duel that was disseminated by the University of Iowa sports information. We are tight and everything is hard. Every point we score is hard. We have to find a way to make it a little bit easier, like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually, I think that's probably the perfect description of what it's looked like for this team this year. And I know they've got a lot of, maybe not, they're missing a really offensive heavyweight, and they probably don't have a true 84 pounder in there right now, and maybe they're missing their best 74 pounder. And they brought some guys in, but they're finding it hard to score, and I think that's the perfect example or the perfect description of what this team has been like. That, yeah, they've gotten wins, but boy, it's not been easy. Nothing's been easy. You haven't seen anybody really go out there and just pedal to the floor and blow somebody out of the water. You really have not seen that. It's, you've seen maybe some instances, and then all of a sudden they give up a takedown and stuff at the end and win by decision. Those big dominant performances have just not been there, regardless of who they've wrestled.
I would agree, and kind of support your comments. At 125, Ayala, who's ranked 15th, and Russell Gallagher, who's ranked 19th, at least in the poll I looked at, won 8-7, a 1 point match there. And then at 49, Vojinovic was a 1-0 winner over he's ranked 15th, and he's wrestling a non-ranked wrestler and beating him 1-0. And then you got Real Woods, your number 1 ranked kid, that's got a 5-0 win over 11th ranked kid. But I think Real Woods is the one that needs to be that Spencer Lee, maybe, that was the springboard, the catalyst that kind of set the bar for everyone on the team. And I don't know that Real has that in him with his style, but he'd be the guy I would be looking for if I was Coach Brands.
Yep. And you mentioned Drake Ayala. You look at, you think, oh well, 15 and 19, that's pretty close. I don't think Drake Ayala is the number 15 guy in the country. I think he's somebody that's a 6, 7, 8 guy in the country. And those high teen guys shouldn't be that close with them. And I think there's some other things that there might be some underlying factors with Drake at this point of the season, but hope that gets ironed out, because Drake is definitely somebody that has the potential to be much better than what that ranking shows. And I think we saw Pat Kennedy, think just his mat time kind of showed a little bit there, kind of had some struggles there in the third period. You could see the guy shooting to the leg that didn't have the knee pad, and there wasn't much strength or sturdiness to be able to fight things off from that other leg. So, nothing has been, well, he said he had a knee scoped. So I'm assuming that's the knee that he had the procedure on. And you can just see there's just not the strength there. And I think that hampered him a little bit in the third period. And then Aiden Riggins, just out horse there at 184, up a weight class or two, and that's going to be difficult. We'll see what they decide with the Soldier Salute later this month, and kind of where guys go, and how that lineup looks when January starts. But right now, that's kind of a glaring hole that they need to decide what they're going to do and who's gonna emerge as a 84 pounder, because they'll need them.
Right. I think they're probably going to be looking at progress with Kennedy, and then they're also going to be wrestling some of their guys in there unattached, and so they're not burning a red shirt or anything. And then they'll make that decision in January when they get to a couple of tougher meets where they might have to slip in, a Gabe Arnold or something like that. So, so I mean, they're kind of, spinning plates, so to speak, if you remember the old.
Yeah. Yep.
But so they're kind of just waiting to see. It's too early to pull a red shirt off or anything like that. It's unnecessary now, and that would be silly. So they're playing it right.
And Zach Glazier, for the second straight duel, sealed the deal for Iowa. His decision at 197 gave him the 6-point lead. It also gave him criteria, as long as they didn't have a point deduction. In the final match. So Glazier is somebody that has bided his time. Wrestling behind Jacob Warner for a few years. Only had 3 or 4 matches prior to this season, and here for the second straight duel, he's sealing things up for Iowa. I think that's kind of a feel-good story for them, that Glazier has stepped in and has had success here early on, after kind of remaining, dedicated and loyal. Kind of talked to him a little bit last week for the dual preview, and said, with the transfer portal, it's real easy to decide, well, I'm not getting my shot here right now. I will go somewhere else, because he could have been a starter anywhere, a lot of other places. And he stayed there, said, since I was a little kid, this is what I wanted. I wanted to do it in a Hawkeye singlet. So he, kind of maintain the course. And now we've seen him make contributions and have two big wins the last two duels. So that's kind of cool to see.
Is it possible that there might be an addition to the Iowa, or maybe a couple of additions to the Iowa lineup in January? Is that possible? That might fill in either.
It's it's possible. I don't know the exact status of that. And coaches aren't going to discuss that. And I don't know what they can discuss, especially if nothing's in ink, right? I know with recruits, they can't say anything about a recruit until they get the facts with his signature saying, I'm going to, here's my national letter of intent. Here's my NOI and the signature. They can't say anything until they have that in hand. So I don't know what exactly they could say, but, there are rumors out there that there might be a former Oklahoma State guy looking to join the Iowa lineup, and the same with his brother. And I know there's another brother that's committed to Iowa. I believe he's a top seed at upcoming big upcoming prep tournament here. But it's very possible that could be. And I know I don't know if Glazier is somebody that could be an 84 pounder. I really doubt it. I think he looks, like a 97 pounder, and that's a considerable drop from 97 to 84. But I don't know exactly where he certified at, but it could be interesting to see what changes. I think January 12th is when Iowa wrestles Nebraska, and that's their first competition after the Soldier Salute the 29th and 30th. And that could be interesting too, since you brought that up. Will we see one of those guys whose names are being bandied about, if we'll see them unattached at the Soldier Salute?
If we do, that's a pretty strong clue right there. Right. So you one or both. But I wouldn't surprise me at all. Yep. And I don't. There's no need to, but I think once this term's over, someone that's going to enroll or has enrolled in that second term would be eligible right away. So they could actually be eligible in December. There's no need to. There's no duels or anything, and so that it would make sense to go unattached. But
right.
So I think we'll see. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that would definitely make things interesting, and I know a lot of people have kind of talked about that. I'm going to backtrack really quick to Iowa State, just to mention. We mentioned Bastida. He was co-Big 12 Wrestler of the Week with his performance out in Vegas. Shared that honor with Oklahoma State's Isaac Olenek, who won the 165-pound bracket there as well. So it's the third honor for Iowa State this year. He joins Kyson Terrakina and Evan Frost to earn honors in November. So just wanted to bring that up quick. At the D3 level, there's some good things going on here. Most notably, Cornell. Cornell goes up to Milwaukee, the Milwaukee School of Engineering, for the MSOE Invitational up there, and the Rams come away with a second place finish behind perennial power Augsburg. Kind of a distant second, but still they edged Wisconsin Whitewater by a half point for runners up. I mean, a pretty good showing there for Cornell and Coach Brent Ham.
Absolutely, and I mentioned that it's going to be fun to watch Co and Cornell this year. They've got some teams. Coach Ham and company down there. Carter Happel also on the staff, and one of my former wrestlers, Jacob Scherzer, that wrestled for him last year, was a qualifier. He's on staff there, so
Cool.
Got to talk with them at the Co Invitational a little bit, and they're excited. So that Augsburg was 202 and Cornell was 90, so distant. Yeah, that's a like a mile away.
Augsburg will do that to a lot of teams.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of Wartburg and a few others, but
right. This is a 13-team tournament. Augsburg had 6 champs and 4 runners up, and then Cornell had a champion, Gabe Smith. Gabe the Washington, didn't he? Washington that they were so high on last year. He's just continuing that this year, and he went 5-0. So I mean, there's 5 matches. Pretty deep tournament there. Their 74-pounder Brian Petrie was 3rd, as was Jackson Brinker at heavyweight. And then also Jaden Rawl at 25 was 5th, and they had 3 6th place finishers as well. So good job.
Yeah, I think 8 overall Rams placed, and they showed their depth because I think they had multiple place winners at 1 or 2 weights. I know heavyweight for sure, and there might have been another one in there as well. But 8 medalists, and showed some depth at a couple weight classes. Well, some good things happening over in Mount Vernon.
Right, they took 22 wrestlers, or they have 20, let's see it. They took 22 wrestlers up there, only 10 score, but they had, of those 22, 1 was a senior and 5 were juniors. So they are a young team too. So
anything else from the D3 side that
a couple
noticed
just this
last weekend?
Co is off, but their next meet is tonight. We're taping this Wednesday, so tonight versus BV, your alma mater, and then they'll wrestle Saturday at North Central in Naperville. So that one's a away meet there. That's at 7 p.m. And then Loris had a rough one, which is, speaking of Augsburg, they thumped Loris 46-0. They'll wrestle next at Cornell on Thursday up in Dubuque, so tomorrow. And then UD was at the Ohio Northern. They took 3rd out of 14 teams in their tournament. They had 2 champs: Alonzo Smiley at 165, Justin Matson at heavyweight. And they're off until the NWCA duels that are up in the Dome on January 5th and 6th. They have a heavy schedule in February, though. They have 9 competitions in February. So,
oh wow!
As opposed to Cornell, who has 3. So.
Yeah. Usually they're tapering back. They're heading into the qualifier, but not. That sounds like a pretty full slate, gearing up for postseason.
Right. And then Luther lost 43-3 up in Waverly, and then and they'll next wrestle the Pointer Duels, which is this Saturday at Stevens Point. And they're wrestling Stevens Point and Cornell up there. So that's it on D3 side.
Looking at Upper Iowa was at the BVU Open this last weekend. Upper Iowa had some good performances up there. They had they got a title from Jackson Heaston at 125. They had a handful of place winners. Were Dawson Schmidt. I think people remember him from Wapsie Valley. He was 3rd. You're looking at Joe Eball was another place winner at 149, where he got 8th. But Cale Bridgewater, the former Northland prep, he got fifth there. So the highest finisher for Upper Iowa at 149 was Bridgewater. Um, at 157, I don't think they had kind of their guys in the middleweights there. I don't see Chase uh, Lensman in the field. Ryan Steffen placed eighth at 174 for the Peacocks. And Josh Glendenning, if you remember him from, I believe he was at maybe New London and then might have transferred to Meepo, but he got third at 197 for Upper Iowa. And the latest NWCA D2 rankings came out, and Upper Iowa is ninth in the coaches poll. So some good things going on there in Fayette for Coach Grimm.
Yeah, they're going to do a nice job. I think he's got some good athletes to build that program with, and that are committed and that are going to do a good job. So, and I'm not surprised to see him bump up to ninth, and I would expect him to climb even higher this season.
And Coach Grimm does a real nice job managing his wrestlers and his lineup to where you will see the best version of Upper Iowa's lineup in mid-January and forward. You know what I mean? Uh, whether it's guys being added to the lineup or just kind of the way he handles the workload with guys or what have you, but they seem to be their strongest from mid-January on. So it'll be exciting to see. They might be number 9 now, but like you said, given their progress that they always seem to make throughout the year and the way Coach Grimm handles stuff, I almost would expect even higher things or better things from them the second half of the season.
Right, and I bet the NWCA duels that I was mentioned, they'll be in there, and it'll be fun to watch them with that high level competition and see how they do dual meet wise and individual wise. So,
and especially since they only have to travel a short bit, since those are going to be back at the Unidome in January. So,
right, when I was heading to them, they were the first one was in Indiana, and then the next couple were in Nashville. So, everyone, they were nice venues, but it's going to be nice to be able to for the local teams to not have to travel very far, like you're saying.
Oh, for sure. That should be a fun event. Like it at the Unidome. I really do. Well, any other things on the college level that stand out, or are we ready for you to tee it up?
One more thing before I tee it up. Just a quick comment with Iowa women. Their next competition is the North Central Invitational Saturday, okay. And I think you can watch that for free on the if you go to the North Central website. It looked like it was on what they call the Cardinals All Access. So just click on that, and I think you can watch it for free. You might have to set up an account, but I don't think there's a charge. So if you want to watch the women wrestle, there you go.
Oh, that and Columbia makes it to Iowa, kind of an Iowa loop here this weekend. Columbia will be at Iowa City at Carver Hawkeye Arena for a duel with the Hawkeyes on Friday, and then Sunday the McLeod Arena or the McLeod Center at Cedar Falls, where they take on UNI. As you mentioned earlier, UNI's first duel of the season. So Columbia making that Iowa trip, and they might not be the best hosts or the nicest hosts. Could be two really lopsided wins for Iowa and UNI, but that will catapult them into their kind of semi-holiday break here for both teams.
And before I saw the pre lineup for Iowa, depending on who they put on the mat, I kind of favored Iowa in 8 matches and had 2 toss-up matches because I wasn't sure. And I did this based it on rankings. So Columbia had 6 guys that were ranked. Well, I guess one's out of the lineup now, but they're kind of middle teens to upper 20s and 30s. So they're lower ranked wrestlers.
Right.
But so with Iowa, it didn't seem like it was going to be much of a battle. And then with the ranked wrestlers anyway, so I don't know if they'll have them on the mat or not. But then with UNI, different story. So now I had UNI favored in 4, Columbia favored in 5, and 1 toss-up match that had probably 2 unranked wrestlers. Again, I'm going strictly on rankings, and if they were close, 11 to 14, I'll say, I gave it to the higher ranked one. So the UNI meet could be a close meet, or who knows? UNI could run away with it. I would expect.
Okay.
So we'll see.
All
right, tee it up. Here we go.
Tee it up.
This is an interesting one. I'm attacking the name, image, and likeness. So the NIL, has it, or will it ruin or drastically change college athletics? That's my question. So a little bit of history. I'm going to be brief here. In Colorado in 2004 is kind of where it started. A high school player, Jeremy Bloom, was recruited to play football at CU. He had competed in the Olympics and World Cup skiing events. He was a world champ in freestyle moguls. He had endorsements with ski equipment companies and Tommy Hilfiger, and he was denied the right to retain those endorsements while playing college football. So he had to drop those endorsements. Anyway, so there's quite a few other incidences between then and now, including a $40 million settlement in 2014 with the NCAA and a $208 million settlement in 2018. In 2019, that was the big year. The California judge ruled that the NCAA could not cap compensation to athletes competing in colleges in California. About 30 days, September 30th that year, the California governor signed a Fair Pay for Fair Play Act that said those athletes could now sign endorsements, they could be paid, and they could hire agents and so forth. Well, that sent the NCAA scrambling. Well, they came out a month later and announced that athletes would be able to benefit, and it was kind of a glossy cover for them. And so then Illinois didn't think it was sincere. Illinois filed suit, and then a bunch of other states filed suit. And that's how it kind of got going. So anyway, and then in July of 91, the NIL was permanently opened. And now it's this big, now we're seeing what we're seeing. So to follow up with that, the pros, obviously the money that the athletes can make. This is a pro that they say could happen, I think, only with football and basketball. More athletes will graduate instead of chasing pro money because there's not pro money in the other sports, right? So whereas before those athletes would chase it, not go continue in college and try and chase that pro contract or whatever. So anyway, small businesses benefit and more customers, and then also charities benefit. So those are kind of some pros. The cons, and this is where it hits hard. Many more transfers are chasing more money. So now it's pitting this college against this college to get more money. We just see it all in the transfer portal. The recruiting violations, that we don't see so much, but they're going to be there if they're not already. Unequal pay for sports, football and basketball, maybe get $1 million contracts. Some of the Olympic sports, unless you're a really cute gymnast down in Louisiana, you're not going to make a lot of money.
Right.
And then the unequal money between Division I athletes and Division II and Division III athletes, or even the Power 5 schools, like for instance Iowa and Iowa State, as opposed to UNI, a mid-major sort of school.
Yep.
Money there. So like it or not, wrestling, it's here, and it is what it is. I for one miss the athlete loyalty to the program and the school, and vice versa, the loyalty from the school to the athlete. Because if you're a senior that's been there for 4, maybe 5 years, all of a sudden they're recruiting someone or they're getting someone out of the transfer portal or whatever to take your spot, and you just spent 4 or 5 years. And in wrestling, probably not an 8 athlete. So, maybe a football yard or something like that. But and that makes me have this great appreciation for the Division III athletes that are doing it for the love of the sport. They get no athletic money, no scholarships or anything like that. So anyway, there's my rant.
Do you think the transfer portal will affect how kids are developed or how coaches develop athletes? Because before you used to have to invest a lot of time. If you had somebody, um, you might have to invest a lot of time to develop because, hey, in 2 years, you're going to have to be our guy. Now, if a guy doesn't come along, you can go to the transfer portal and, you know, pull in a pull in an All American or somebody that was at like you said, a smaller school, a mid major. Pull them in. You have less work you have to put into them. They're a little more polished. And then you just go ahead. Hey, well, you know, this guy's not to where we want, or we don't put in the time with him because we know, hey, we'll grab somebody. He's not going to be able to do it. It's not going to be worth the effort, or not worth the effort, because no coach really functions that way. At least any coach with their salt, works that way because they want to get the best out of athletes, but they get to a point where they realize, we're topped out here. We need to find somebody better. And then you maybe don't see them putting in the time for that development. And that can go for any sport, you know.
So my last comment, I didn't finish reading it, was, the the colleges, whether it be whatever level, I always appreciate the colleges, the universities that develop their program rather than have transfers moving in like we're seeing now. And so very, very much so, man. I think you're going to see less of it because of the transfer portal and the NIL and so forth. And I don't know what the money is in wrestling. I have no idea if there's, a NIL money that's, I can say this. I do know that my son was received a little bit of money on NIL, about $40, I think, T-shirt sales. So,
Well, I remember asking somebody who's involved with some, you know, they kind of help athletes kind of set up possible NIL, uh, not ventures, but ways to kind of raise money, right, for themselves. And they're like, how much are guys really making? And this was wrestling, you know. He's like, they're not, you know, it's very small. Uh, the obvious exception was Spencer Lee, right? Spencer Lee was somebody that, you know, with his brand, he was able to make a substantial amount. The rest of the guys, it was really pennies on the dollar for what they were getting, So uh, it's not as lucrative as people might think it is, even at the D1 level. So, um, yeah, and the other thing about the transfer portal, and this is something that's always kind of stuck in my mind. Gino Auriemma, the women's basketball coach at UConn, who is one of the best coaches ever in any sport. Um, and that pains me to say because I'm a huge Notre Dame fan, and UConn. There are some battles between him and Muffet McGraw that still, uh, you know, uh, are still bitter. Still provide bitterness for me. But anyway, Oriema was asked about the transfer portal, and he mentioned how it's become such an easy out for athletes that You know, you don't like what you're doing, don't want to work harder. And that's not the case for all transfers. It's not a, you know, it's not necessarily they don't want to work harder, but he just mentioned some of those factors going in and they hit the transfer portal. Well, when they hit the transfer portal, they're one of like 1,200 people in the portal. There aren't 1,200 spots for you to go find. Those spots are, you got recruits coming in and you can enter the transfer portal, but, for a lot of them, they're not going to find the spot or they're not going to find a place that they wanted to go to or find a better situation than if they had stayed and, you know, uh, kept working that original program. So that's something that always kind of stood out to me that, yeah, it sounds great. I think Joey Labus, the backup quarterback at Iowa, is entering the transfer portal. And that sounds great. Oh, he'll go somewhere else. Well, he's not guaranteed of finding another D1 location. You know, he's not assured of finding a place where the grass is actually greener. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration.
But I don't know if I think if you enter the transfer portal, that doesn't mean you're actually leaving the school you're at. So he could still remain a Hawkeye. I don't know if that frees up his scholarship if he happened to be on one or whatever. I guess he was, but so that now he may lose his scholarship possibly. I don't know. So in his instance, that kind of makes sense. He really wasn't given much of a chance to be on the field, so that's kind of writing on the wall right there. Maybe he found that he was at a school that he wasn't, his talent wasn't quite to that level, and now he wants to maybe find another, school that would be a better fit or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know. My ignorance expands to, I don't know what players have for advisors. You know what I mean? That, hey, Eastern Illinois is really looking for somebody, and they were wondering if you were, thinking about leaving. You know what I mean? I don't know if there are people that provide guidance to where, that helps them make the decision to enter the portal. I know there can't be direct contact from coaches, right? It's not the Wild West to where they can kind of get a feel for somebody and then they enter the transfer portal. They have to wait till guys have entered the portal and then they can contact them. But there's probably somebody in their ear saying, "Hey, uh, you know, Wisconsin Green Bay is somebody that really wants you to be their starting point guard. You're not getting any playing time, here. You might want to see about doing that."
Well, you bring up a couple of good points, and I agree with that. That's that. Is there are coaches or are they using other people to speak for them? And that's where that that illegal recruiting comes into that I was talking about. That those cons that could be out there, probably is. I would hope not. Ethics should mean a lot in the coaching world, but sometimes it doesn't. And then it's like, are there companies or people out there that provide that service? Hey, I'm a sophomore point guard, and I'm looking to move. What do you got open for me? It's kind of like looking for a new athletic director at the University of Iowa. They have to open up. And they hire this company to do all of that for them. So are there are there companies out there for these athletes as well? So I don't know.
Hey, before we move over to the prep side of things, and you mentioned it, you and I named David Harris has gone to Tulane to be the Tulane AD, which second UNI AD to do that. Troy Dannon did something similar before he moved on from Tulane. Um, but now Bob Bowlesby is named the interim AD. What are your thoughts about Bob Bowlesby stepping in, former Waterloo guy, right? University of Iowa uh, alum, I think. Um, was Iowa's AD, was AD at Stanford, Big 12 commissioner at one time. Now stepping in and kind of bridging the gap for UNI in a real transitional period with, kind of the fundraising efforts to make renovations across campus.
Now you forgot to mention he's a former UNI AD, so he was.
Oh, okay.
So it's, in my opinion,
Coming back home.
it's a brilliant hire. He's from Waterloo. He's where he grew up. Went to Waterloo West, and then was it AD at UNI before he went to Iowa, and then
Iowa. That's right.
So to me, I mean, it might be a rubber stamp sort of thing. I don't know what an interim does and how much power they have. You might have a lot of power, I guess. You have enough power to fire offensive coordinators, I guess. So you got a lot of power. But
we've seen that. Yep, for sure.
So anyway, I think it's a brilliant hire, and I know Bob a little bit. Of course, my brother knows him very, very well. Took him skydiving, actually.
Sure.
And Don was the wrestling coach when he was the AD for a while. Anyway, then I think a lot of Bob. He's a real good guy, and obviously, when you listen to that guy speak, you listen. I mean, he turns heads and he commands the room, and he'll do a great job. Yeah.
I've heard from some other people in the UNI community, the coaching community up there. I think the timeline to hire the next AD, the next full time AD is by April, and of course that makes sense because that would allow them to get things going for the 24-25 school year. But I think having Bowlesby in there right now, especially with some of the things that they want to do, I think he's a great person to kind of oversee that and being able to hand it off to the next person and hit the ground running when they step into that position. Because there are some big things happening at UNI and a lot of things they want to get done. And I think he's a great great person to be able to advance that in his time as the interim AD.
Yeah,
and who knows? Who knows? Maybe it reignites a little bit of a fire, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, well, maybe I'll stick. Maybe I'll stay on."
Maybe, but I wouldn't think so. But I would hope
No,
so.
I wouldn't think so either, but it would be a pipe dream, I guess.
Right. And UNI's in some fundraising right now with their certainly in the wrestling world with their new facility that they need to fundraise for that. I think Bob's a good person to be kind of in charge of that, or at least a part of that. And even if it's a brief time, but yeah, it's a good hire.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, let's transition to the prep side of things here this weekend. We had the very first full weekend of competition. Such an awesome slate of events. You had the Dan Gable Donnybrook at Extreme Arena in Coralville. You had the Cliff Keen Independence Invitational at Indy. You had the Bob Murphy Classic at West Delaware, and then a tournament that we both have quite the affection for, the Keith Young invite in Cedar Falls, Wapsie Valley. Had the Chris Davis Invitational. The former coach, and I believe AD there that's named after. Um, so a lot of action this first weekend. Um, let's start with the Donnybrook, obviously. Um, on the boys side of things, we mentioned it last week. There are a lot of teams from all over, from Iowa and six bordering states that uh, were in this field, and um, some nationally ranked teams and individuals um, that come in. A real notable team came away with a team title in Mount Carmel from Chicago. They scored over 400 points. They edged Liberty. I think that's from Missouri. The highest Iowa finisher, interestingly, of Bendorf. Um, I don't think Bendorf had a champion, but they ended up finishing third with 336 points overall. Some other Iowa teams, uh, Fort Dodge had three champs, and they were sixth overall. Bondurant Farrar finished eighth. Waverly Shell Rock tied for ninth. Waukee Northwest was 11th. Don Bosco 12th. Limar 13th. Ankeny 14th. Um, and that pretty much does it for the top 20 um, with Iowa teams there. What were some or who were some individuals that really stood out to you? Um,
Well, first comment is I wish that Donnybrook, when they started this 3 years ago, would have started it this week right now, not the first week, but the second week, because you just mentioned a bunch of high power tournaments, and there's really not that many high power tournaments other than the Council Bluffs clear on the other side of the state.
right.
This high power tournaments, at least of that magnitude, this weekend, and then of course next weekend is the Battle of Waterloo, so it would have fit really perfect right into there. But
I always thought the same thing.
Bettendorf, I think, did have one champ. I thought 165 pounder Lincoln Jip, maybe.
Oh,
And then they had,
my bad. I overlooked that.
I believe it, I think it was. And then they had a runner up at 132 and Jason Luna. They had two thirds, Drew Ayala from Fort Dodge and Rashawn Ross. And you said a third one. I missed the third one. So I know those two were champs for sure. And that Ross, man, I'm so anxious to see him wrestle. Oh, geez. I mean, he was a specimen last year when he won state as a freshman. Boz Diaz, it was a runner up for Waverly Shell Rock. I mentioned him because he was their highest finisher, but also kind of got to work with him a little bit in that family and really liked that family when he was up there in Waverly. Colfax Christensen took second, got beat by an out of state wrestler. So that's a bit of a surprise to me, but that out of state wrestler must have been all right. Hayden Schwab, we mentioned that name last week. Don Bosco, 106 pounder, he was a champ and kind of walked his way through it. It appeared by the scores there. Lindmar, you mentioned. Kane Nakamura, champion, you bet. Grant Schultz was third, and he lost his first match and then wrestled on the backside and won. What the thing about this tournament is, if you lose in the first round, you never get the front side people never come to the backside because otherwise it'd just be too many.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that was kind of tough for Grant there, but he did a nice job to win 5 on that backside. I didn't quite understand it. It looked to me like at Ankeny they had 2 wrestlers at 106 and they were both scoring. So I don't know how that scoring was. Usually it says you can look at them and say this wrestler is scoring and this wrestler is not. And this had both of them scoring, which was pretty significant because I think they both placed. So anyway, I don't know how that would work, but so that's one other note with wrestlers that this one was kind of interesting. I hope he's all right, but for Bettendorf, Jake Knight had to medically forfeit out of the tournament. So we'll see if he's all right because he wrestles this weekend. They're at that tough tournament over at Johnston, I believe, if I remember right. So
Well, yeah, knock on wood. Hopefully, he's okay. And I can't remember what you mentioned with Fort Dodge. They're 3 champs. Drew Ayala at 120. Coy Davidson at 138.
That's right.
He beat Cale Kurtz
Oh, yeah.
of Iowa City High in the finals. So um, an all Iowa final there. And then you mentioned Ross at 215, who's boy, I tell you what, he's going to be he already is really impressive and special. But I tell you what, uh, he's big things and a lot of dominance. I think ahead for him, obviously.
So one other note on the Donnybrook, there's
Mm-hmm.
37 teams there, 13 were from Iowa. So it's not a huge pack of Iowa teams, but it's 13 really quality teams that usually want to go into the Donnybrook. So um, anyway.
Right. And did you happen to see? I believe Earl Smith from Intermat had the photo of Doug Schwab watching the finals of the Donnybrook on his phone in Vegas, watching Hayden compete. I think it was shortly after they were done, or at least during the break of UNIA's competition. But it was kind of cool to watch Doug Schwab watching Hayden compete on his phone, um, and him winning it all there.
Yeah, I did not see that, and he's going to have to be doing a lot of that. Not only the next 4 years with Hayden, but with his younger son. It's I don't remember his name, but he's a year or two younger than Hayden. So
Is it Hendricks?
Hendricks. There you go. Yep, Hendricks. Yep. So
Hendricks. Which one of them do they is nicknamed Bob?
I
Do
don't
you know
know.
him?
I don't know.
I'll have to check. Bob Schwab. I always thought that was always funny. But yeah. So hey, go figure. Schwab is a freshman coming in and having success. Think we've seen that before in their family, right?
Oh yeah, four timer
The Duke.
in Mark.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that tournament was big. You know, on the girls' side uh, of things, you know, there were some pretty notable wins. You know, Decorah had a very good showing as well. They had a couple champions, Naomi Simon, um, who is either signed or committed to wrestle for Clarissa Chun at the University of Iowa. So, uh, kind of maybe a glimpse of the future there. Naomi Simon coming away with uh, individual title. And then Cameron Steinis um, for Decorah, I think at 190 um, came away with a championship as well. Um, Decorah, I believe, won the team title.
Yes, they did. They had 408 points to 111, I think, for Waverly Shellrock. Who was second. Bettendorf was third. Ankeny fourth. Decorah also had two runners up and a third. So they had a
Wow.
great, yeah.
And along the same lines as Naomi Simon, Kira Jamesi won a title down there. She's going to be a Hawkeye and wrestle for Coach Chun. So those were two big things. And then Linmar had a champ. We mentioned Kane Nakaborn winning a title on the boys' side. Ali Jelinek with a title. Um, I believe at maybe 120 pounds um, for the Lions on the girls' side. So Linmar took both of their teams down there, and each came away with a championship. Jelinek topped Bree Swenson of Vinton Schellsburg, which finished in the top 10 um, as well. But Jelinek with a fall in the finals to capture that title. And one other thing of note too is, and I don't know the specifics behind this year, whether City Kyoto had enough for a full-fledged girls team, um, or whether Rena Utterbach just decided to compete on the girls' side last year. In the first year of the sanctioned season, Sigourney Kyoto did not have girls wrestling options, so she had the choice of wrestling either on the boys' side or the girls' side, and she chose to wrestle on the boys' side, placed eighth in Class 1A, and was a state medalist. And now this year, wrestling in girls' competition, and she pinned her way through the Donnybrook tournament. She went 5-0. Her longest match was 441 against Ellie Weitz of Vinton Schellsburg in the semis, and she had a 53-second fall over Taylor Strife of Bettendorf in the championship bout. So Rena Utterbach competing in girls wrestling this season, and dominant, coming away with a title there at the Donnybrook.
Yep, a couple other notes on the girls' side. Prairie Kinsey Childers was finished second for Prairie, and then I got to do a shout out for Dubuque Waller, one of my former wrestlers, Lucas Sedlacek. Luke is the coach there, the girls' coach, and he had a champ and Eve Schrocky at 145, and then a runner up. So he had two finalists. So bravo
Awesome.
for he and his girls there, and then. I guess one name that stood out from Raccoon River Valley was Katie Biscaglia. So we know the Biscaglia name. So anyway, there's
Very much so. Yeah, she is one tough customer.
yeah. And
You
then
know,
Mount Vernon had some. Let's see. Kirsten Swart was second, runner up, and Libby Dix was third at 190 for Mount Vernon.
yeah, and for us this coming up week, we'll get a chance to see um Mount Vernon in action. Boys girls doubleheader with Clear Creek Amana on Thursday. So anxious to see some of these athletes in person. We'll move on to one of the other big tournaments. I was at Independence on Saturday for their 2-day event there. I love this tournament. Um, it's really turned into a full weekend uh for that community, and really kind of celebrating wrestlers. I'm actually going to grab my notes here really quick, um
So
because Matt Shannon, well, I'll go over the results here first, but Matt Shannon gave me some numbers on just the overall. They have like a junior high meet on Thursday. Then of course they have uh, the varsity 2-day event Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday they have like a beginners tournament. So from Thursday through Sunday, that gym is packed with wrestling over the entire course. So I want to. Matt Shannon gave me some numbers on what they actually do and how many wrestlers and matches that they go through. That I think is pretty amazing. But first, I'll just mention some of the results here. Alburnett came away with the team title. They looked really impressive. They scored 320 points. Carlisle was second at 282. Fenimore, Wisconsin was third at 277 and a half. And then Union Community, they came in fourth, 256. They had a couple champions. Um, New Hampton, Turkey Valley rounded out the top five at 231. The back half, 6 through 10, Independence, Osage, Clear Creek, Amana, Burlington, Notre Dame, and then Harrisburg, South Dakota. But Alburnett, they had 4 wrestlers in the finals. Looked really, really good from pretty much from top to bottom. And I think they might have been missing a few guys, might have been missing somebody at 113 and 120 as well. So not even a full lineup for Alburnett. And that tells you that the rest of the guys wrestled really well. Their champion came from Preston Klosterman. At 144, he avenged a loss to Riker Jones just last Tuesday in the season opening duel. But he looked dominant all the way throughout, except for maybe the semis. The semis, he really had a gut check where he gave up a takedown in the final like 10 seconds to go down to, and then he got a reversal before time expired to send it into overtime, and then he put his opponent on his back for a takedown and near fall to win that one to get to the finals, and then he built a 9-2 lead against Jones before getting a fall in like 5:09. So he looked really good. Atlee DeWitt was a runner-up at 106. Rowdy Neighbor was runner-up at 126, and then Dawson Becker, who was a 10 seed and made the finals at 150. So they had 3 runners-up to go along with Klosterman's championship. So that looked really the Pirates looked really good. Cedar Rapids Prairie had a champ in Dylan Munson, top-ranked 106-pounder. He's coming off a 7th place finish at state last year. He beat Atlee DeWitt from Alburnett in the finals. This time it was they met last Tuesday as well. 2-point decision each time in favor of Munson. This time, however, he had a score in the final seconds, so he was up by 2 in on a shot. He said he was trying to kind of shelve the leg on his hip when he kind of loosened his grip, and that's when DeWitt kicked out, spun around, and got the takedown to tie things at 5 apiece with probably about 5 or 6 seconds left. And then Munson just kept wrestling, and that was really impressive how many times he kind of gets stunned and time runs out. But he just continued to wrestle and got a takedown as time expired to win 7-5 for a title there at 106. And then Union, we mentioned, they had a couple champs. Jace Hedeman, the undefeated 2-time state champ, he rolled to the title at 126, and then Caleb Olson won at 150 as well. Braden Bonesack made the finals at 113 for Union. However, Denver's Gavin Landers came away with, I believe, a 2-0 victory there in the finals at 113. Here's one of the things that I like about tournaments, or one thing I always kind of keep an eye on, is where's the, is there parity, or are the finals dominated by one team? Only 3 teams had multiple champs at this tournament. Union had 2 champions. I believe Fenimore, Wisconsin had 2 champions, and Osage had 2 champions. Outside of that, everybody else had 1. So, you're looking at, what is that? 8 or 9 different teams with champs in a field. I think that's I think that says a lot about the balance and the depth of the tournament, that you have that many teams with an individual champion. And I thought that that was obviously something that was a part of this Cliff King tournament. Showed a lot about the competition and the depth of the field.
Right. Well, if you had 3 teams with multiple champs, 2 champs, that'd be 11 teams that had.
Okay.
So,
See,
yeah.
I was trying to do the math in my head, and I just wasn't clicking. So thank you for doing that.
Now, I'll mention also that Tate and Koopval finished third for Albernet as well at 132. So they had they had 5 in the top 3. So that's not bad. Now, one comment about Osage, I don't know if you noticed this, but Kittleson and Gass were out of the lineup. They're 2 number 1
Yeah.
ranked. So that made a huge difference. And
yeah, they were not at full strength either.
As it was, they had 2 champs and a runner up, and so throw those 2 in. I don't know that it would have been made up the difference, but it's that's why you're seeing Osage down at 7 and not certainly up higher when you're missing those 2. Now I think I heard that one of those 2 might be out for the season even. So I don't know.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, let's hope not. And I'm not going to start any rumors. So I'm anxious to see. Gavin Landers from Denver, the freshman there. That I was anxious to see how he does, but I'm wondering if Prairie, Albernet, and Clear Creek Command have seen each other enough this year. I was at that duel at Prairie with CCA and Albernet, and in the Clear Creek Command Albernet duel, it seemed like, if I remember right, Albernet was ahead in a couple of matches and got pinned or something like that. So that's credit to CCA. We'll get to see them on Thursday, like we said. Anxious to see them again. They're obviously a good team and battle hard. So nice tournament. What are your numbers? Did you ever able to grab them?
So Matt Shannon said, so they had the junior high event on Thursday. They had over 300 matches on Thursday alone. He said approximately over the entire stretch, those tournaments had 2,000 matches overall.
Wow.
In that stretch. He said that would include over 1,000 wrestlers. And I have a number of 1,500 mark, but I can't remember what that was in reference to. But you're talking about thousands of matches and thousands of competitors over the 4-day at various levels. You've got a junior high event, you've got a varsity event, and then you've got, a youth and beginners event. And that says a lot about the dedication and devotion to the sport and the effort that, you talk about wrestling communities, right? And you highlighted a couple of them, and you've been a part of a huge wrestling community too at Jefferson over the years, where, you had parents and groups that, stuck around and volunteered even when their kids were out of the program. And then, then their kids were part of the volunteers, as well. And it's just something that kind of sustains itself. And that says a lot about how much that community loves the sport of wrestling and willing to volunteer and put in the time to do stuff like that. And kudos to the indie group.
How many mats did they have for the Cliff Keen? Do they have 6 in the gym?
And then 2 in the auditorium.
2 in the Jim and Judy Blinn auditorium. Okay.
2 or 1? 1 or 2 in the auditorium.
2 usually.
And then 6 on the floor itself.
Right. So 8 mats going. And then of course with the youth tournament they can divide those up and have even more.
Right.
Usually they have, let's see, 8 and 10. I think they have 13 mats going because they divide them up kind of by size with the youth tournament. And that's just in the gym. They don't usually use the auditorium for that.
So. Mentioned the Keith Young was Saturday as well. we got to see Dubuque Hempstead come away with a big win over Linmar, winning on criteria, 37-36 on Thursday. 2 days later, they go up to Cedar Falls for that traditional tournament, and Dubuque Hempstead comes away with the title. So a great start for Brett Haas as their new head coach, taking over for longtime Mustangs coach and his dad, Chuck Haas, is still hanging around as an assistant. But they scored 184.5 points, beat Ankeny Centennial, who came in at 177. And then Norwalk was third, 166, followed by North Scott, 12 points back of that. And then West Des Moines Valley was third. Cedar Rapids Kennedy finished sixth overall. But right now, boy, you got to be impressed with what we've seen out of Hempstead here that first week.
Well, and throw in the fact that they're missing one of their better wrestlers in Mitchell Penns. So
right, he won't be back till right around Christmas.
Right. I was talking with Chuck Haas before the meet, and in one of his comments, we were doing name checks and different things, and he goes, "Are you going to be surprised when we beat them tonight?" And I went, "Yes, because they're the fourth ranked team," and Hempstead was low. By golly, they did it. It was one of the more fun meets that we've seen in a long time. And got to call it. That was very exciting and fun. But
right, calling the shot. That's pretty cool.
I said that, man. I'm going. I did say it. Yeah, I'll be surprised. By golly, so only because I didn't know much about about Hempstead's team. They graduated a few, including their state runner-up at Lewis at 215 or 220 last year. And anyway, so they had champion Evan Broughton at 126, Mitch Murphy at 32. They had 2 seconds and 3 thirds. So they had a really great showing. Hempstead did. Other names of note: Kennedy, Nick Bloxham, who's the son of one of my former wrestlers, was second at 122. And here's a name we're very familiar with: Colin Falk at 165 was third. And Cale Smithard, another son of one of my wrestlers, and his mom was a Jayhawk as well, at 150 was fifth. So Kennedy had a nice showing there. Other local interests, Aiden Tim was third for Belle Plaine at 138, and Argo was fifth at 157. And then Jefferson had 2 fourths, and Colin Woods at 215, and Anthony Snodley was fourth at 285.
So good showings up there at the Keith Young. For those, just kind of backtracking to that Hempstead Linmar duel, that was such an emotional roller coaster where, Hempstead got out to a big early lead. Linmar battles back and takes the lead. Hempstead takes a 6-point lead going into the last match, and Linmar desperately needs a pin just to force criteria, and they get it from Griffin Schultz. Pin Tate Woodruff, 2 ranked wrestlers going at it, and that tied it at 36-36, and then it criteria went all the way down to criteria I, which most match points. Hempstead had a 49-45 advantage there, but just such a fun duel. And you mentioned the eruption from Linmar on that final pin and trying to figure out what criteria is being applied. And we think Linmar wins it. And then you realize, wait, that wasn't the criteria. We've got to go further. And it goes all the way down to the 9th criteria. And then we find out a winner, and it ends up being the other team. And just a lot of drama and excitement throughout that whole duel. Bonus points came into play, obviously, a lot of pins, and some that went Hempstead's favor to get that big win. But what a heck of a way to start our dual coverage with that one.
That was a lot of fun. And we didn't know what it was, and I grabbed one of the Linmar wrestlers, and they're all excited and jumping because they thought they had won it. And I go, he said, yeah, Linmar won it, and so we kind of went with that. And then I'm looking over, and I see the referee neighbor that was checking the score. He must have went in and got his book and was checking down the criteria. And I'm going, this isn't over yet. There's so. I don't know if you remember, I interrupted your interview and said, "Hey, enough for match score," and you did a great job and could give us a kind of an indication of who gave me an indication anyway that this thing's going to get reversed.
Right.
We made the public address announcer made the announcement, and then of course crowd went crazy, so they were all
excited. I remember one of the coaches coming over and said, "Hey, because I keep stats throughout the duel and asked me what I had for match points, and I still think maybe there's an escape there that was missed for Hempstead in one of the matches, but I was like, I have 50-45, and then they went back and checked, and they said they had 49-45, and that was the determining factor, and it was just it was just a wild event from start to finish, and so much fun, so much fun there. Of course, mentioned we'll be at Mount Vernon at Clear Creek Amana. Mount Vernon heads to Clear Creek Amana on Thursday. We'll get a chance to see the boys and girls duels between those two schools. What other tournament? Just want to mention here really quick the Bob Murphy Invitational, long-standing tournament hosted by West Delaware. Indianola comes away with a team title there. They scored 254 points. The Iowa Grant Highland team out of Wisconsin was second with 207. West Delaware was third at 197. Anamosa fourth, 139.5, and then Benton finishes out the top five with 129.5 points. This was another pretty big tournament, 15 schools there as well. One thing I kind of want to point out about the results, they do have multiple. You can have multiple entrants in a weight class to fill out the bracket. If a team has the ability or even wants to do that. And it gave us a pretty interesting result at heavyweight, where Maquoketa Valley, it was an all Maquoketa Valley heavyweight final between Aiden Salau and Brady Davis, the two teammates, both seniors, pinned their way to the finals. And then Salau ended up with a 6-2 win for the championship. That was one where it was scoreless through two. Salau escaped. Davis got a takedown, but then Salau got a reversal and near fall in the final 104 to win 6-2. And the reason why I mentioned that, as well as it just being the teammates, Davis was seventh at 215 last year at state. Salau was seventh at heavyweight. Davis went out for football for the first time this fall and bulked up. And his descent plan kept him from he'll be at 215 this week, but he was still stuck at heavyweight Saturday. So luckily, because they're able to add a second wrestler, both of them were able to compete and like I said, pin their way to the finals and went 1-2 at that weight. They were joined in the finals by their teammate Nathan Bites. He placed third at 1A, the 1A state tournament last year, and he got second behind McCade Bloker of North Butler, Clarksville. Anamosa had a really good tournament. They got a title out of Austin Scranton at 175. Um, he's 6-0 now. He beat Brett Yakovic 11-3 in the championship there at 175. So a big win for Scranton, and overall a really good showing from Anamosa. Um, they had a place winner at 106 in Campion who got fourth at 113. Wetland was third. A couple more that they got sixth. Easton Wheeler at 144 finished third. His only loss was to a wrestler from Iowa Grant Highland. So we mentioned they're from Wisconsin, I believe. But Wheeler finished things off with a big pin over Indianola foe. And then Hudson Scranton also third at 150. He beat Weber of West Delaware in the placing match, and Mike and Wheeler reached the finals, finishing second, falling to an Iowa Grant Highland wrestler in the championship bout. So a heck of a showing there from the Blue Raiders, who I believe they might have a sharing agreement with Central City. I think Central City has a wrestler that was formerly at Central City, wrestling with Anamosa now, that's made a big contribution. So good showing there. From them, we mentioned Benton Community rounded out the top five. They had a champ in Brendan Hain at 165. Blake Hain was third at 157 as well. So those are the top finishers for the Bobcats.
Just one comment: that heavyweight situation with cutting down the descent plan, not allowing them to make weight 215. That wouldn't have been an issue last year. Remember, it was 220 was the weight.
Oh, that's right. So, that's right, because of the new weight classes.
Yeah, so he has to cut 5 more pounds this year.
So, yeah, and I have a little something on that at the Gazette.com too, kind of going over the situation with the new weight classes. This was the first year the National Federation of High Schools, or state high school associations, gave states the choice. They were given a choice of 12 weight classes, 13 weight classes, or 14 weight classes. And each state could choose how many weights they wanted to field this year. Iowa stayed with 14. So that altered some things, especially in the middle to the upper weights. So the first 6 weight classes are the same from a year ago. Where you start getting kind of the adjustment in weight classes is before, where it was 145 to 195. It starts at 144 and goes to 190. As you mentioned, 220 drops back down to 215. It was at 215 for quite a while before it moved up to 220. And heavyweight's the same. But now you've got 144 instead of 145. You're at 150 instead of 152, 157 instead of 160, 165 instead of 170. And then it goes from 175 to 190. So you kind of take out that 182 and 195 weight class. Talking to some coaches, it really hasn't affected them too much. I think Clayton Rush at Albertet said he kind of likes it. Basically, one of the positives is he, and of course, remember he's a lightweight. They didn't they didn't mess with that lowest weight class, and he thinks that was good because really, when you're at that stature, that's one of the only sports where you really have a legit chance of competing at the varsity level in high school, just because you're not going to have a 106 pound uh, football player, basketball player, really um, being able to contribute, and he's glad they kept that lower weight. But um, it just seems to maybe fit the mass of participation a little bit better in those middleweights as well.
I never got too concerned about it when they did weight changes because it kind of, in some cases you might have a team that now this new shift fits pretty well with your team. I would think Alburnett would be fit in that category, but that's
Yep.
always evolving. 3 years from now, maybe you've got a bunch of heavier guys, and now you don't have those weights. So it is what it is, and your team and your kids adjust to that. They see what weights they need to get to and that sort of thing. There's a lot less weight cutting this year, so that's a good, or not this year, but the last few years, and that's a good thing. So.
And that and the girls have separate weight classes as well. They were given the same uh, options, different weight classes, but still that's 12, 13, 14 weight class option as well. One of the other rule changes that I kind of mentioned in that too was uh, now they've changed the limit on matches to 6 matches per day. Before it was 5. Um, so now sometimes you would get to a point where somebody might wrestle so many consolations that they'd have to forfeit that last match because they've already hit their limit of 5 matches going forward. Now that's to 6, except in the situation if it ever comes up for state qualifying competition or state competition, that'll be changed. Um, you can wrestle. So like these 2-day tournaments that we just had, like with Independence and um, the Donnybrook, you can wrestle up to 10 matches in 2 days. And that's been altered a little bit. And the other thing too is, I think it takes effect this season. Instead of the 45-minute rest period, they deemed that 30 minutes was substantial enough and good enough. So now that wait time um, for a wrestler to compete in matches is 30 minutes instead of 45. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's correct, and that I don't have any problem at all with that. That's most of the time it's not an issue. Even at 45, it really wasn't much of an issue, but it can be. So it's good that it's at 30. Most of these kids have wrestled, youth tournaments and so forth, where their turnaround can be very quick towards the end of the tournament. So like 5 or 10 minutes quick, and so you might wait early in the day. You might wait an hour or two between matches, and then at the end when it's gym's being broke down and there's 2 rounds left in one weight class, you're throwing them in there. So I don't have a problem with 30 minute.
I always when I think of that, I look back at the University of Nebraska Omaha Open, the Brand Kaufman Open. When I was at Buena Vista, we wrestled there to kind of open the season, and there were 500 some guys wrestling in that event, from D1 guys that were going over unattached to a lot of D2 and D3 competition. Some JUCO teams uh, were there. Um, and I can remember sitting around, it seemed like 2 or 3 hours before I stepped on the mat once. For the first time, I had to wait till uh, almost noon. I think before stepping on the mat, and then towards the end, always joked we had a 77 pounder named Clint Dunlop, who I was really good friends with, and usually right on Matt's side while he was wrestling. And when he was finishing up, he it was like he got off the mat and then it was on deck on mat 2, and it was like you waited around for hours for your first match, and now you're almost going. You can't even catch your breath before you're being called again. Then so it's funny how that kind of goes, and yeah, the 30 minutes thing I think is fine, and sometimes you probably have unnecessary uh delays waiting for that 45-minute rest period to eclipse before starting a mat or a match, and that just elongates a really long day anyway, right? So I think this will help overall and would be good for the wrestlers and coaches, workers, fans that sit through those long tournaments.
Right. Yep. I imagine we're getting to the end of this, but I wanted to mention this weekend, Mount Vernon quickly has a 16-team tournament. It's a really great collection of Eastern Iowa, Northeast Iowa, Southeast Iowa, kind of, all the way from East Buchanan, Burlington, Sigourney, West Marshall, and then everything in between there, it seemed like, including number 1 ranked in one poll that I saw, Mount Vernon. They'll also have Davenport Assumption, number 8 ranked, number 10 ranked West Delaware, and these rankings could have moved. Also, Lisbon, Linmar, and Xavier from the local area. And then this tournament out in Des Moines area, KJ, the Johnson Invitational. I took my team out to that quite a few times. Anyway, number 1 ranked, this is the high school dual rankings. So number 1 ranked Southeast Polk's there, number 2 Bettendorf, number 4 Waverly Shell Rock, number 5 Johnson, number 6 Indianola. And then throw in local flavor, Cedar Falls, Washington, and Prairie in there. So that's a doozy of a team tournament as well. So,
and obviously earlier you mentioned the Council Bluffs Classic. Iowa City West heads over there for that tournament. I believe that's really the only local participation that we have over there. The Bobcat Duels, Western Dubuque's dual tournament, is this weekend as well. That's always a fun one. You got Alburnett, who we mentioned, won the Indy Invitational and went 1-1 with Clear Creek and Cedar Rapids Prairie. Cedar Rapids Kennedy is also up there. Obviously, you've got the Western Dubuque, Pleasant Valley, Williamsburg. A little bit of a depleted lineup for the Raiders this season, but they'll go up there and compete hard. You also have some teams from out of state with Caledonia, Houston from Minnesota, and then Dakota, Illinois being in the mix as well. So that's always a fun one. Nashville Plainfield has its tournament, as well as North Cedar, a small school tournament there in Clarence. So, some more big tournaments, and then of course next weekend we'll get the Battle of Waterloo at Young Arena. But another fun weekend, and then next thing you know, we'll be edging towards the break. Oh, and South Tama also has their dual tournament this weekend as well. Independence will be there, kind of headlining that tournament.
Kind of dual tournament weekend, isn't
it? Yeah, very much so. Any parting words or anything we didn't touch on really quick?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in with our wrestling talk for this week. Check us out again next week as we go over what happens this coming weekend and look ahead to that final weekend before the break. For Dick Briggs, for Nathan Ford, I'm KJ Pilcher. Thanks for watching. Coach Briggs, why don't you take us out?
Let's keep wrestling on the move.